Thank you, Ambassador Raghavan, Ambassador Bernard, my original house of learning, Pathfinder Foundation. I'm delighted to be with everyone. And when I received the invitation, there was no way I was going to say no, because I do understand the importance of it, and I do understand the dialogue, the continuing dialogue. And I have benefited immensely by association with great Indian think tanks. I have been part of many think tanks, and I have really benefited, and it has really molded myself to perform my job. So thank you very much for everybody, and I'm delighted to be with you this afternoon. So let me start with the final part of my topic, that is the deepening India-Sri Lanka ties in the new world order. Let me speak from the Sri Lankan point of view. What is this new world order that we all are talking about? And we know that we are all waiting to hear the post-COVID-19 world. Now, in the 2019, we were expecting a new world order, more globalization, more freedom of travel, more freedom of commerce. But unfortunately, it was not the world that we received in 2020. Now, 2020, instead of more globalization, we started talking about globalization. We were contracting, we were getting little slower. And also, this has given rise to nationalism, especially in Sri Lanka. This COVID has given rise to a lot of nationalistic feeling of how we should survive in a pandemic in the future, should it come again. And also, I must say, this is an advantage for our two countries. The COVID has given rise to a feeling of regionalism, the importance of working as a region, depending on each other. And also self-sufficiency in especially two things, medicine and food. This is of critical importance to all our countries in a pandemic of this nature. And also the role of international organization. Now we know that the World Health Organization is the governing body, but then they were under so much of flack. Their votes were cut, they were criticized, but still they're holding on to the ground, onto their ideology. So the role of international organization also came under the microscope during the COVID-19. And also, what is a superpower? Is it a militarily, economically, diplomatically powerful nation? What about protecting the lives of its own citizens? That's another issue that we are looking at, because in Sri Lanka, we have really given priority to saving lives. I'm very fortunate to say 8 months, only 19 lives have been lost, and that's a mere 0.34% of the people who got infected. And also, now we do experience another form of diplomacy, that is the health diplomacy, as another very strong form of diplomacy. And of course, we are benefiting from it at the moment, because we get 2 plane loads of stuff from India. Great. That was essentially, we needed those items. And similarly, we got things from China, from Japan, from South Korea, from America, from England, from Singapore. So this is the health diplomacy at its best working. Now, the impact of this is going to be really bad, I guess. It is going to head into a very deeper recession. So how do we look at this Sri Lanka-India relations through this deep or worsening financial situation? I think is the way forward for us. Now, instead of bridges and roads, we may be investing more on hospitals. So that's the irony of the situation. Now, very briefly about the geopolitical landscape, because it is actually within this geopolitical landscape, Sri Lanka and India has to work and survive and flourish together. Now, we all know that the Indian Ocean is the key ocean. There is no two words about it. We keep hearing about it every time, how important Indian Ocean is. Now, if I give 2 very important aspects of the Indian Ocean, there are 2. That is, one is the Indo-Pacific strategy, other one is the Belt and Road Initiative. Unfortunately or fortunately, Sri Lanka is in the crossroads of both Indo-Pacific strategy as well as the Belt and Road Initiative. Now, today, we know that the Quad is really moving much better. I mean, although it started somewhere in 2007, but now Quad has really moved, and we all know there is no secret who are the members of the Quad, but we are watching what is happening in the Quad. Do we really need a Quad? Will Quad not give rise to a not a cold war, but at least a cool war in the Indian Ocean. These are some of our concerns because Cod is moving, and we believe that the Malabar exercise in 2020 or 21 will include Australia as well. And there is no issue regarding that because we are not part of it, but we are observing the rise of Cod as an exclusive military alliance. That is the problem. If Cod is aiming at economic revival of the entire region, I think there are no issues. But then, of course, we are not the one who can decide because these are the major powers in the Indian Ocean. And of course, Mr. Jaishankar, as the foreign secretary attending the Cod meeting in Japan, he said it is a very natural evolution outcome of a more multipolar world. Well, if that is a more inclusive multipolar world, I think Sri Lanka as a small country will be very, very happy. And of course, we know that the Code is working very closely to each other. And also now we are in the backdrop of a very important visit from US State Secretary to India and to Sri Lanka. He was here just yesterday, and when he was in India, India and US agreed to, enter into different agreements, the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership and the Basic Exchange Cooperation Agreement, BICA. These two, no doubt, will be good for the region, good for India and USA. But the objective of these two, is it purely to counter China? That is the question we keep asking ourselves. Is it purely to counter China, or is it for the genuine interest of the Indian Ocean? Now, if I briefly touch upon Sri Lanka's situation in the Indian Ocean vis-a-vis India, we believe, like India, we are in the center of the Indian Ocean. From east to west, India and Sri Lanka are in the center. And Sri Lanka is the closest landmass to the busiest shipping route in the world now. The east-west shipping route across the Indian Ocean account for 50% of world containers, 35% of bulk cargo, and 72% of world energy. So we are sitting on a top of a gold mine. So one very important aspect when we talk about the geographical location of Sri Lanka is that we are close proximity to India. Now, that is a fact we must really understand the value of it. Close to India, which was fastest growing economy in 2018 with 1.34 billion people, 900 million young population, huge market. That's going to be a real asset. Now, because of the geographical location of Sri Lanka in the Indian Ocean, the geostrategically, geopolitically, and geoeconomically, Sri Lanka has come to the limelight. And if you draw the spheres of influence of many countries, whether it is India, Japan, America, Australia, even Russia for that matter, or EU and UK, Sri Lanka is in the spheres of influence of all these major players in the country, in the Indian Ocean, of course, including China. And also, if you draw the lines of axis of interest, again, all these axes of interest are crisscrossing the small country. Sri Lanka is technically a non-aligned country, but we all can argue. I heard even Mr. Jaishankar arguing what is the relevance of non-aligned today, because non-alignment was when we had two clearly identifiable two blocks, but now it is not the case. We have more multipolarity than that. So we wish to be a neutral country in the non-alignment moment. Now, Sri Lanka, the current government and the president has three pillars for development. And number one is national security. Number two is economic development. And number three is international relations. Because these three, as far as the president and the government is concerned, very much interlinked. For us to have national security, for us to have economic development and prosperity, it is critically important how best we handle our international relations. In that, we have 5 pillars. Number one is, while technically remaining a non-aligned country, we want to remain neutral. And number two, while remaining a neutral country, we want to maintain friendly relations with every country. Now, it doesn't mean that we bandwagon with one country, we balance relations with one country against another, we try to hedge one country against the other. No. We really want to maintain friendly relations with all the country. Number three, we don't want to be caught up in this power game. Now, this was reiterated by our president when the Chinese vice premier visited Sri Lanka 2 weeks ago. And yesterday when Mike Pompeo visited, he reiterated the same thing. And number four is, We should not allow, we will not allow any of our territory, either on land or at sea, to be a threat to any other country. We will not allow anything, national assets of our country or at sea, to be a strategic threat to another country. And number five is critically important to India and Sri Lanka. We will not, we cannot be, we should not be a strategic security concern to India. Period. We have to understand the importance of India in the region, and we have to understand Sri Lanka is very much in the maritime security and air security umbrellas of India. Period. We need to benefit from that. So therefore, these five pillars, how we meet these five pillars and how do we maintain strategic autonomy through these five pillars is a huge challenge that we have in the future. Now, ladies and gentlemen, so let me now focus. I mentioned about the US Pompeo's visit. Many speculations were there that it is going to be a very contentious issue. Unfortunately, we disappointed the media because there was nothing conflicting about it. It was a very good diplomatic visit. It was a very good state visit, and they were very genuine. They spoke high diplomatic skills, and the media is hugely disappointed. But then, if you look at what Mike Pompeo said, he said, we wish that Sri Lanka to be a new, a sovereign, independent country. That is exactly what we want as well. We want to maintain our independence, we want to maintain our sovereignty, but still we need to play our role in the region. And Sri Lanka is very conscious about this militarization of maritime trade, securitization of the maritime trade. Unfortunately, we know Indian Ocean is the most militarized ocean in the 2020, in the 21st century. We know that it is a fact that, from 2009 to now, 550 warships have visited Sri Lanka. That's a huge number from 28 different countries. That's a huge number. So that is only one indication how militarized this region is. So, ladies and gentlemen, now let me come to the final part, that is, how do we maintain Indo-Sri Lanka relations? For us, this is critically important. In the Indo-Lanka relations is of critically importance to Sri Lanka. We have to remember we suffered from a protracted war for nearly 3 decades. And when we came out, India was there to support us. They built 50,000 houses, laid a railway line, and then cleared millions of mines. And even now, the Indian housing projects is going on. So we benefited immensely from India's effort post-conflict. Now, we all know that India became the fastest growing major economy in 2018. We need to piggyback on that. We are a small country, small economy, and we are next to a huge economy, which is predicted to be the number 3 economy in the world by the IMF by 2030. We need to benefit from that. But we need to benefit from that, and we need to target the large 900 million Indian middle class. If we produce something for them, we can really do a good business from that. Now, India has moved away from the pack, so to say. They became the black swan. They were not, unfortunately, our region didn't have a black swan because we were all going happily, very slowly, gradually developing, criticizing each other, looking at each other. But we didn't really take the leadership to move forward. But we have to, now India has done it. So we need to benefit from that. And of course, Professor Sachin mentioned, Ambassador Raghavan mentioned about the mistrust. Yes, there is a huge trust deficit, unfortunately, between our two countries, which are culturally, religiously, people to people, economically so close to each other. Unfortunately, we have this, and Ambassador Bernard mentioned few factors. So these are some of the things that we really must address, and not to bring them up again and again and again. No need to do that. Let us forget the past. Let us leave the baggage behind and then move forward in the future. Now, Indian investment is coming, but we need more Indian investment. We should not have only investment from one direction. We need multiple direction investment to come. We cannot be only one country's investor investment zone. We need multiple investment to come. And also, India should understand that Sri Lanka will not, cannot, should not do anything to undermine India's strategic security. This is something our president and the government is reiterating again and again and again. So this is something, and yesterday, I will now confess to you, in front of Mike Pompeo, our president said, this is as long as I am in power, I will never allow to harm India's strategic interests. And I was feeling very happy when he said, reiterating to the Secretary of State, this is a fact, because we can't do that. We should not do it, right? So this is a fact. Now, at the same time, India also should not do anything to undermine us, the small country. Yes, we are small, smaller population, maybe smaller than the state of Kerala. But at the same time, when we look back at the history, yes, we have had issues, right? Even in the human right domain, we have had some issues. So we need to be very mindful about that as well. Of course, one way is we need more people to people contact. Should the COVID end, we should start moving back and forth between the two countries. We should engage people more. We should engage culturally, education, technology. We should benefit from each other. And finally, at the 15th minute, I would say we are important to each other. Thank you, sir.